This is Leah with Flow Acrylic. Today I'm going to do a black and white pour, emphasizing some negative space. So I've got some black acrylic paint and I have some white acrylic paint that I've added some pouring medium and silicone oil to. The white paint brand is Daler Rowney acrylic, not fabulous but not horrible, and Waverly Super Premium Semi-Gloss. I'm going to start by, now I've pre-primed this. This is MDF or Masonite board, that's what they call it. And I have pre-primed it with some gesso. It's pretty kind of ugly right now, the gesso part, just because I knew all of it was going to be covered with paint, so I didn't pay it too much attention. But I'm just going to fill in the edges on this before I can't find my palette knife. Palette knives are really good for this. Palette knife, you just kind of smooth out everything. Sort of like when you frost a cake, those big flat spatula things that you use to kind of mold. You can see this brush is leaving some texture. I don't know, maybe that'll be nice, maybe not. This paint that I'm putting down is a little bit thicker. This is going to ensure that I've got some good negative space. Negative space, if you're new to art, is the space on a piece of art, or kind of, I guess, anything, that the subject doesn't consume. So I'm going to pour here and kind of tip it a little bit. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently. In the past videos I've done what are called dirty pours, but in this one I think I'm going to pour straight on the Masonite. These are just little, like, Wilton makes them. They're used for candy making and stuff like that. So I'm going to do few little dots. Now my paint is kind of thick, so I'm a little worried that it's not going to pour very well. The consistency of the paint is a huge factor. We'll see how this works. This could be a total disaster, but that's okay. I'll put a little black on that one. I'm gonna try kind of doing little dots. The reason I wanted to use black and white as well is so that you can see how these react, because you know what pure black looks like and pure white looks like, so anything that's not that, is where those paints have intersected. Whereas if I use color, sometimes it's hard to know, especially multiple colors, what kinds of reactions are actually going on with the paint. Now this is a lot of black. Put a bunch more white. And put some. I might actually put silicone oil right on the paint. Man, I want to just like start tipping it. Maybe that's what I'll do, but it is pretty thick. Thinning out your paints obviously is going to help them flow better. I'm going to help this out by filling in these spaces. Do is run. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Okay, now we're just gonna go ahead and start tilting this. I'm getting some bubbles that I didn't intend on. This is much thicker than I realized it would be. I'm gonna influence it a little bit there. Now, what invariably happens is it looks really plain, and then I want to start jigging with it, but you start to get a lot of different things going on as it dries. So I'm going to see if I can like incorporate. This is probably a really bad idea to try to incorporate that little mess up. I could just like try to cover it with white. Yeah, that's maybe like a little bit of black. I don't know. Okay. All right. I'm really bummed how thick this paint is over here. I'm gonna see if torching it is gonna help. Here we go, we're getting some reaction. Just a little bit. But as that dries, those might get bigger. Right now they just kind of look like little flecks. Maybe they'll get bigger. Might try blowing it a little bit. You know what? I'm gonna do some like little tiny white dots in here and see how those eventually end up reacting. I might kind of swirl them in a little bit. So they don't look so painfully obvious. But I don't know how much this paint is going to move because it's pretty thick. If you do thinner paint, obviously it's going to slide around a lot more. Let's get my little stick here. And I might just kind of influence it a little bit. But I want to keep the integrity of the original idea intact, kind of this swirly. You see there's not a whole lot of reactions going on. I'm going to do another one of these with much thinner paint and see what that result is, because this is so thick. See, and that white is really thick. It's just sunk. All those white dots that I did, they've just sunk down at the bottom. I'm going to blow it a little bit. Which can be a horrible thing, by the way. Blowing works pretty well with thicker paints than thin. I'm also gonna see if I can influence this paint texture. Okay, the blowing's kind of nice, although it is sort of making some grays in there, but you can kind of see the effect of that. I'm not sure if my camera's in a good place. Now I'm getting more cells in there, much more interesting. There we go. Ooh, are you seeing that? I don't like too many cells. I think they're interesting, but that's one style, is to have lots of cells everywhere, but I kind of like a little sparse. Okay. Well, maybe that's enough, and I won't fiddle with it too much. I'm gonna make, this is my first one in the series. I'm gonna make another one that's much more watered down. And you know what? I might really regret this, but I don't have a palette knife, but I do have a finger. So I'm gonna just kind of sweep that off, just to make it, oops, a little less. Plus, I'm not sure how that's gonna dry when you have really thick paint. Okay, so this is, and I'll do a video on this, a swipe technique. I'm gonna grab this and pull it just like that. We'll see what kind of, if there might be some reaction that goes on here. It might just stay like that, which I actually don't want it. I don't want it to look so accidental. It's gonna do this. I just can't help but fiddle with it, you know? Just gotta play with it. Maybe that's because I feel like if I just pour it, that like maybe I didn't really make it. It's like the IKEA furniture thing. Like, you have more ownership when you've made it yourself. So maybe this painting would have been even better had I not meddled with it, but I'll just live with that. Okay. All right, I'm not gonna fiddle with that. That's gonna be the final piece. Thanks for watching. This is Leah from flowacrylic.com. I wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like after it's dried a little bit. You can see the paint has changed from the really wet look that it had. Here's a little bit more detailed view of how the paint reacted. I just wanted you to have an overall look of how the painting turned out. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how this paint looks as it dries, because I find that I actually like the way that it looks before it dries, typically because some reactions occur, and I'm not always sure what's going to happen. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Thanks for watching.